What you're going to hear today in the pit is very different from that. The orchestra for both of these operas is quite extensive. It's very large. And if you look down in the pit, you'll see that that's not a very large location to accommodate a big orchestra. So in both of these works today, you'll be hearing a reduced orchestration. In L'Heure, there are 15, is that about right? 15 musicians in the pit. For L'Enfant, we have 2 pianos, a flute, and cello. So quite a bit reduced from Ravel's large orchestra. In setting L'Heure, as I mentioned, Ravel was interested in creating or evoking comic opera. Another aspect of that that is quite striking is that often in this piece, characters are not given these lyrical moments to express their feelings. Ravel instructed the singers that he wanted them to perform in an almost sort of dry, spoken fashion. The one character, though, who seemingly gets to bypass all of this is Gonzalve, who's the young poet. And as you might expect from young poets, he often waxes poetic, and Ravel underscores this by writing music that's very lyrical and very, very effusive. In this opera, and in both of these works, another aspect of Ravel's compositional genius is the way he's able to write music for characters that seems right for them. We have this young poet who often just sort of seems to go off in his own world, and Ravel writes this wonderfully lyrical music for him. The character of Don Inigo Gomez, who is this old, kind of stuffy, pompous man about town who is patterned on the comic opera base, has music which evokes this kind of sort of stuffiness. Concepcion, this fiery young woman who's receiving her lovers, often has music that is very passionate in evoking Spanish vocal styles. So in just a period of about less than an hour, Ravel takes these 5 characters and gives them music which seems to be perfect for their character type. The other opera on the bill today, L'Enfant et le sortilèges, couldn't be more different. It's a story that focuses on childhood, but it's more than just a childhood fable. It's, I think, a story about how adults perceive children. It's a very subtle look at how adults impose or wish to impose order on being a child, and how children bypass that. One of the ways that Ravel creates this childlike, almost dreamlike world is by writing a series of isolated episodes that are strung together. The story, again, very basic. A child is being naughty, doesn't want to do his homework. He's basically sentenced to the bedroom as punishment and has a massive temper tantrum. All of the objects that the child has tormented come back and try to teach the child a lesson. In the process, the child learns the lesson of compassion. So we have a character, a young child, who evolves over the course of the opera from being very self-absorbed, very kind of me-centered, to one who understands the power of compassion and empathy. And to do this, Ravel creates these separate episodes. Each of the entities in the child's life comes to life in an episode that has its own specific musical style. Those episodes are not necessarily linked to what comes before them and after them. A great example is at the very beginning, we encounter the armchair and the ottoman, who sing in a style that's very evocative of 18th century opera. This is followed by a teapot and a cup who sing in ragtime and a foxtrot, followed then by a fiery soprano who's evoking fire, who sings music that is very flashy and very sort of outwardly expressive, kind of almost like you would hear in a 19th century Italian opera. Very high soprano. So we have these three different episodes, each with its own musical style. The story was provided to Ravel by the French author Colette, who actually solicited the libretto to him without his approval. She sent it to him in 1916. Ravel was enlisted in the army in World War I. He never received it. It was another 3 years after World War I ended before he agreed to collaborate with her on this, and it was a full 9 years between the time she said she sent this draft to him and the premiere, which is a long, long period. Ravel typically needed years for projects to gestate. What appealed to Ravel about this story is the emphasis on children. Ravel acknowledged that he often felt more comfortable around children. His friends pointed out that there was often an aspect of the childlike about him. And in this opera, he creates this wonderful childlike world. He also creates a world in which inanimate objects and life forms, like bats and dragonflies and squirrels, come to life. It's a very magical opera. And these two works, which really represent two aspects of Ravel's compositional style, are I think, great introductions to his output. I mentioned at the beginning that we don't often think of Ravel when we think of opera, and for good reason. His entire operatic output will be presented on stage today. 2 works lasting about an hour each. Wonderful, wonderful works, a great pair to see together, and a great introduction to Ravel's music beyond Bolero. So we've got some time. I'd love to take some questions.